Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is, as always, still and always will be, Nick Pell, and this is, as usual, coming from my white room. Now, today we have the second book in the Hunger Games series, which I am very excited to review for you guys, entitled Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. And like I said, it's the second book in the trilogy. In my opinion, it is probably the better of the two that I've read, so it's better than Hunger Games. And let's just dive on into it. Starting with the characters, and this would be our first character, which would be our title character, and our main character, Katniss Everdeen. Now, Katniss has just won the Hunger Games, and it's a few months after she actually won the games, but she is living in basically a life of luxury and wealth as a result of having won the games. And her being her voluntary, nice person self, she basically goes around and gives whatever she doesn't really need, which is a lot, to other people who are still really poor and in need of her food. She also still hunts to try to provide food for Gale and his family, since Gale is now working in the coal mines. But speaking of Gale, he is one of the people that Katniss is basically having a love issue with. And it's between Gale and Peeta, and you get to see how that develops, and it's basically a result of how Katniss and Peeta treated each other during the games themselves. And if you've read The Hunger Games, then you'll know what that was like. Second main character is Peeta Mellark, and he was also the winner of the Hunger Games alongside Katniss. And as Katniss told him at the end of the Hunger Games book, she basically revealed to him that she did some of the stuff that she did as an act to get support, to get sponsors, to basically what Haymitch told her to do. And he's very upset by this because he believed the whole thing was real. He thought she was really in love with him and that his dreams were all coming true. So he is a little... they're not as close as they were during the first book as a result of that. And our next main character is Gale. I still have no idea what his last name is. And like in the last book, he's still a longtime friend of Katniss, but he is also kind of cold towards Katniss as a result of the games, like I think I mentioned with Katniss. He saw all the kissing and romantic crap that was going on between Katniss and Peeta, and he's a little jealous by it, honestly. I think everyone in District 12, including him, kind of figured that they two were going to end up together at some point, and now he kind of sees that as not a certain definite possibility. And yeah, you get to see him kind of work through that along with Katniss and Peeta in this big love triangle that's come about. And we also have Haymitch Abernathy, and he is the tutor to Katniss and Peeta, and he was during the Hunger Games themselves, and now he's kind of just their neighbor and their friend, and they're all kind of close, like one big family. I'm not going to mention her in the characters specifically, but Ify is also in the book, but she has not nearly as big a role in Catching Fire as she did in the Hunger Games. So she's in the book, but only for about the first half, if that, so keep that in mind. And lastly, we have President Snow. He makes much more of an impact in this book than he did in the first one, including like going down to District 12 very quickly into the story itself, and his actions there kind of set the stage for the rest of the story and how Katniss is going to act and perceive things. And that's the main characters. There are quite a few new ones that are introduced much later into the story. Keep that in mind. They are important, some of them, as you'll figure out towards the end. But for the most part, those are the main characters that you have to deal with. And then some of the side characters like Katniss's mom and sister and all those other people, you'll know them just if you read the Hunger Games, but I'm not going to mention them in detail because that would make this too long. And we move on to plot. And the story, like I said, with Katniss is set about 3 months, I think, after the events of the Hunger Games getting done, and Katniss and Peeta being claimed the winners after their little rebellion against the Capitol. And once again, the story follows Katniss through her life in the first person, which I think is a really good aspect that Collins kind of focuses on to keep the story alive and make us see some of the desperation and thoughts that are going through Katniss's mind which I felt that the Hunger Games movie did not really have, which kind of brought it down slightly, but I still enjoyed it if anyone was curious. You're probably not. Like I said, Katniss is now living in a life of wealth and luxury alongside Peeta, but both their lives are never really going to be the same. With Katniss, her best friend Gale is now kind of giving her the cold shoulder since A, he has to work in the mines, and B, he saw what her and Peeta were doing in the games. So that's something that changed drastically for Katniss. But really quickly into the story, I'm talking like chapter 2, Katniss learns that her actions during the end of the games have been kind of seen as something of a spark to possible rebellions and uprisings that are going to occur throughout Panem. And this kind of goes along with Haymitch's little warning that he gave Katniss towards the end of the Hunger Games too. He said that most of the people in the Capitol were not, well, most of the game makers, including President Snow, were not very happy with her and Peeta's attempted suicide. So she is being very closely watched, and she has basically been warned that she needs to keep her act straight. And after that, very much of the story depends on how Katniss acts during her and Peeta's victory tour, which takes up about a third of the book, if that. It's kind of seen at first as a big thing, but they kind of go through it in just a few chapters, which I guess worked well with the rest of the story, but it kind of built up to something that wasn't really that exciting. So yeah, there's that. And then the very end of the story, like the last few chapters, is very dramatic. It's much more suspenseful and exciting than the end of the Hunger Games was, because the end of this story sets up the finale of this trilogy, and it does it very well, because you can easily see where the story is going to start off in Mockingjay. It's a very cool way that they end up doing it. But in terms of the flow from the Hunger Games book to Catching Fire, I felt that it worked really well. It flowed very continuously into Katniss's narrative once again. There was a little bit of recap in terms of what happened, but little enough that it didn't really bug me too much. I noticed it, but it helped, if nothing else, I think. And in my copy of the book, there is 391 pages. I don't know if there's another copy even available right now besides the paperback. Probably will be in 2013 when the Catching Fire movie comes out. And as always, the book is split into 3 different parts, about 150 or so pages separated from each other. And yeah, we move on to themes. First theme is justice, in terms of what the Capitol really should be allowed to do and what they believe they are allowed to do. And you see this in District 12 pretty quickly, at about a third of the way through the book. And it kind of sort of goes along with Game of Thrones and whatnot, in terms of what the highest power considers justice and what another person sees as justice and lawful punishment for something. But I'm not really going to get much into it, because it is a big thing and it has a big narrative point about halfway through the novel or so. I don't really remember where. But something happens in District 12 that kind of makes you question, well, allows you to question kind of the justice of the Capitol, which we already know is corrupt. Right versus wrong, this also kind of goes along with what I said in terms of justice. Reasons for living, this kind of goes towards the last part of the book. I can't really go into much without spoiling it. During the trilogy review, I will obviously talk about this stuff in a little more detail, hopefully. If I don't, send me a message in the comments during that video, which will come out next week along with the Mockingjay review. So leave comments and questions and stuff like that for that review. And lastly, rebellion. This also kind of goes mainly along with the last part, but also with kind of the narrative itself kind of spread out, because due to Katniss's actions, things have become very uneasy for President Snow and the Capitol itself. And lastly, we have enjoyment. And if you haven't been able to tell already, I very much enjoyed this book. I literally just finished it probably like 10 minutes ago, 10, 15, 20 minutes ago. So I'm just going right off it. and it ends with such suspense that I am eagerly awaiting to read this book, Mockingjay. I'm very excited to do it because it sets up that book so well, and I really want to get to it. And the characters themselves, they work well. They work like they did in Hunger Games in terms of character development. There isn't as much because we already know a lot of these characters, but there is some. But a lot of the same formula as the Hunger Games is used in Catching Fire, which it worked well for this book, but it did feel kind of redundant at times in terms of like we've seen this before, show us something new. So if there's any flaw in this book, it'd probably be that. But the plot as a whole is really able to grip you from the very first few pages of the story itself. Because I finished the book in about 3 days and just raced right through it. I was hooked on it. I didn't want to stop. Last night I was contemplating just reading through, but I had to work at 8:15 this morning, so that wouldn't have been a good idea. And it also has very exciting moments that happen regularly, which very few books can hope to have. And the exciting moments aren't just thrown in there to be exciting. They actually have relevance, and they help make up the story itself. I did feel that some parts could have been a little expanded on, but having just come from A Song of Ice and Fire, that series, in which they basically give details in the most excruciating detail, I've kind of just gotten to know that, but so it's kind of to be expected, but it does work without it. That's just one negative that I saw. But overall, I would highly recommend it if you have read The Hunger Games and want to know if it's worth continuing onwards, or if you just want to know if the series or if the trilogy is good. This is basically the Storm of Swords of the Hunger Games trilogy, in my opinion. This is coming from not having read the finale yet, so that book could blow this one away in massive waves of awesomeness, but I don't know if it will, and I'm hoping it does, but I'm not sure, based on what I've heard. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this will be the Storm of Swords, because the Hunger Games kind of worked its way up to this, but I'm hoping Catching Fire is going to work its way up to Mockingjay. And so yeah, you have Mockingjay coming next Sunday, and then along with that, there will be the trilogy review, like I mentioned already, in which I will talk about Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Mockingjay. You can put whatever you want in the comments. You can send video responses, comment, or message me, all that junk. I want to talk about this series. I love it. And next up is the Millennium Trilogy, so Girl with Dragon Tattoo, Girl Who Played with Fire, and Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. Those will be the next 3 reviews coming after Mockingjay next week. If I do not get the One Piece series finished, because my friend has yet to send them to me as of July 6th. So if I don't get them for whatever reason, expect that trilogy next, followed then hopefully by One Piece. And so yeah, that's about it. I rambled on a lot, so if you're still with me, thank you. Like, favorite, comment, and subscribe as usual. I would highly appreciate it. And I guess share too if you feel up to it and think this is good enough. So yeah, I think that's about it. And as always, my name is Nick Pell. Keep on reading, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Oh, carry on!